happened.
Season 2, Episode 16 of the Hall of Fame show. And 16, it's the Joe Montana episode.
Ah, there we go. That's better. Now that I know we're doing a number at the beginning, I'm a little more prepared. So.
And Montana also won Super Bowl 16. By the way, what Hall of Fame can Joe Montana also get inducted into? What could it be? Oh, I
know. The best people named after states.
That's true. We need another Hall of Fame. Hannah Montana.
Yeah, there we go.
Joe Montana.
Johnny Utah.
Johnny Utah. Ooh, that's a good one. Robert California of The Office. Underappreciated
Robert
character.
California from The Office. What else we got? This is one we weren't thinking of.
No. But specifically, he is a finalist for the United States Athletic Hall of Fame. If you haven't checked that out, please do. NotInHallOfFame.com/USA.
Yep. It's vote early, vote often. But by often, I mean once a day only.
Yes, exactly.
The next day, so.
Which is still often. And it's all decided by you.
Yep, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Soccer Hall of Fame... Sorry, not the Soccer Hall of Fame. Buchner, you got this better than that. The Premeir League Hall of Fame now has announced the first 2 members. And this is your baby. You're the soccer guy on this show. So why don't you tell everyone about
definitely the soccer guy.
Yes. Well, comparatively speaking, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have the martial arts and I got soccer.
Yes, although I can't. I don't think I could beat you in a fight, but that's neither here nor there, and I don't intend to piss you off.
Yeah, I've never lost a fight, so it's been 20 years since I've been in one, but I'm still undefeated. So
I usually have large friends do all the fighting for me.
So anyway, the Premeir League Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. So 2 new entries, or 2 first entries, please. Yeah, tell us all about it.
Yeah, this is something they were planning on doing last year before COVID hit, and they were talking about bringing the first class in and everything, and there are going to be 2 members, and everyone was pretty sure it was going to be Alan Shearer and Thierry Henry, who ended up being, and then they were going to keep going from there. But that's what they ended up doing, and then they're going to have a 6-member class coming up. They had 23 finalists that people could vote for another 6 people to join them. So it's almost like we have to put these 2 in, and then everybody else is still part of the first class, but know that Shearer and Henry are the top 2 guys. I think it's very hard to argue, at least when it comes to scoring, that there's ever been better players in the Premier League, which again the Premier League itself has only been around since 1992. But that there's ever been any better scorers in the league than those 2 guys. Shearer is still the all-time goal scorer. I think he has 260 goals, which he retired 15 years ago. So he had 260 goals in 14 seasons. It's almost 20 a year, which is a lot of goals. And he was with Blackburn and Newcastle United, had over 100 goals with each team. He's still the only player in Premier League history to do that. He played 14 seasons, 260 goals, still the all-time goal scorer. Basically the Babe Ruth of the Premier League, if that makes sense.
It totally does. Didn't Blackburn get relegated shortly after he left? I'm just assuming they did.
It wasn't. Yeah, it's pretty closely. So he won the title. The Blackburn won the title in 94-95 campaign. And then from 96 to 2006, he was over at Newcastle, which was his boy time. I think Newcastle went down. Not Newcastle. Blackburn went down shortly afterwards. I'd have to look that up exactly, but it wasn't. It may not have been. It wasn't that much longer that Blackburn went down. Blackburn and it was probably the biggest surprise winner of the Premier League before Leicester.
Mm.
And they still are pretty much probably the two biggest surprise winners of that league. But he's a 3-time Golden Boot winner. And it's hard to argue, absolutely hard to argue that if you're going to have a first person in or list two, it's almost impossible for him to be left out. So that it just makes sense. So it is interesting, though, that he is going in. So they have a white Englishman and a black Frenchman going in. So Thierry Henry is going in, won the Premier League title twice. He moved to Arsenal from Juventus back in '99, won the Golden Boot Award 4 times, a record, and scored 175 Premier League goals and 258 appearances for Arsenal over his career. Also, as any Irish fan will know, France made the World Cup over Ireland back in, I think it was 2006. I'm maybe messing up my years, during a qualifying match where if Ireland tied, they would have gone. No, I'm sorry. It was a qualifying match, but there was the second place teams were having home and home elimination to make the World Cup, and he knocked the ball down with his hand right in front of the goal and scored, and nobody called it. So Ireland still feels badly burned, I think, by Henry, but just absolutely one of the greatest scorers in soccer. Like he's the all-time record holder with 228 goals in his Arsenal career across all. 175 in the Premier League, but 228 in all competitions for Arsenal. And just again, despite the thing that beat Ireland, still one of the classiest players ever to play international football, and just really, really you couldn't ask for a better two forwards to go in than those two guys. So
in that France,
I think they did a good job.
In that France-Ireland game, which Major League Baseball umpire was there?
I'm presuming Joe West.
Okay.
Although there was a call. Who made the call? I can't remember which one made the call yesterday in the Brewers game.
Yeah, at first base.
They called runner interference when the ball was at the base before the runner who wasn't even trying even got to the pitcher. And the pitcher wasn't in the baseline anyway. It's the umps trying to make themselves the star of the show. It was just completely and utterly unnecessary.
You know, you get the feeling that the umpires are sort of like doing that just when baseball is getting a little bit of mojo back. Before we went on, you sent a message that you just wanted to give like a shout out to Shohei Ohtani. And just the sick year the 6th month, really, because we don't know how this year is going to play out. But what he's accomplishing right now is Ruthian. Whether it stays
Literally.
that, yeah, exactly. It's the first time you can actually use that, and it's not hyperbole. It is incredible. If you're not watching baseball, and I know a lot of people have been turned off by it, I get it. But Ohtani right now is the most exciting player in baseball. Not named Fernando Tatis.
Junior,
thank you. So these are just
as you say, the juniors are doing pretty well. Vlad Guerrero Jr. hit 3 home runs in a game yesterday, 2 days ago, which is something his Hall of Fame father never did, believe it or not. That was the weird one, that Vlad Sr. never hit 3 homers in a game.
Yeah, it is. Just remembering that. I had no idea that he had never accomplished that. I still remember, for Jay's 3 home run game, I remember George Bell. I think it was the opening day after he won the MVP. He had 3 home runs against Kansas City. And then pretty much everything went to shit for him after that. So this means we just have a few other segments. We can go right to our segments here. What should we do? What should we do? Oh.
I don't know. I think I need a sound effect.
It's coming.
There it is.
Just going to let this play a little longer. I love this part. Not only the best sound effect Hall of Fame podcast, But it's also the most prepared, as you can tell by the studio engineering.
The studio engineering is it's really, really gone very, very high quality. So
Absolutely.
So what I wanted to, the good, the bad, and the ugly this week, by the way, I don't think we mentioned the Ohtani segment just before we get there, that Ruth led the league in home runs in June of 1921 when he started. And Ohtani is leading the league in home runs with when he started on the 25th, which is the first time literally in 100 years. Mm-hmm. So where somebody did something so ruthless. So just back to that. But anyway, going to the good, the bad, and the ugly here. So the good is I'm actually going to go to another Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They have a lot of people to induct.
Yes.
So we had the Centennial class 2 years ago, and we had another class elected just a couple months ago now. But the Centennial class, which had 20 people total, never actually got their ceremony. So now they have, 28 people to induct, and in August in Canton, Ohio, is going to be a long time. So what they've decided to do, and I usually am not in favor of this, but I actually like the way that they have done it, is they are honoring the 9 posthumous members of the class of 2020 and 2021 with a Hall of Famer Forever enshrinement special, which is going to be carried on the 1st of May, which is Saturday, which is the 3rd day of the draft. So immediately following day 3 of the draft, you go through everything. We have day 1, we got day 2, we got day 3, where the spectacle continues with the 9 men who have passed away who are all elected. And it just looks classy and well done. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great way to make sure that some of the people who would otherwise have gotten a little forgotten this whole thing, people like Bill Nunn or Ed Sprinkle or Max Speedy, or people who aren't necessarily household names to a lot of pro football folks, get their own little time during basically prime time on Saturday. It's going to be 6:30 or 7 o'clock probably by the time the draft ends on Saturday. Mm-hmm. That's still like right after dinner, and you have a chance to just like wind down and be like, all right, who were these guys? And I really think it's a good timing. I really think it's a great way to do it. And I think it's a good thing to do, because otherwise, I mean, if they're just inducted with the other 28 people,
they're going to be forgotten.
Or the other 19 people, it's just going to be completely and utterly forgotten. Like, no one's going to remember George Young's anything about it other than this. So I really like this. I think it's a good idea, and I think it's good that all these Hall of Fames are facing situations in which they have to make decisions because of COVID. And what happened. And some, like the Baseball Hall of Fame not having a Veterans Committee meet, or the NHL Hall of Fame is playing and skipping it all together, aren't handling it as well as Pro Football. I don't think Pro Football Hall of Fame has handled it just as well as pretty much anyone.
Yeah, they've done a fantastic job, and I think it just sort of like shows how they may not. You can debate whether pro football is the biggest sport in the United States. I will never. There's no one who can debate with me that the Pro Football Hall of Fame is not head and shoulders above all the other ones right now, and it's not even close.
I'd agree with that. Baseball, of course, has the long history, but again, I've particularly harped on this a lot. Baseball is run by people who don't like the sport right now, mm-hmm. and that includes the writers just as much as anyone else, and they're the people who are voting on. The Pro Football Hall of Fame has some drawbacks, mainly the fact that Ron Borges is one of 5 people who gets to decide who the senior candidate is this year. But overall, it does a very, very good job. And now that people have stopped making political statements about the finalists who get there, because we have too many good people who are just not in the hall, then it's even better. And now we have a couple of quibbles. We think there should be 2 senior candidates every year and not 1. For the next, 5 years?
Yeah, that's
4. We just had 1 this year. But because there are way too many senior candidates. They've almost completely forgotten the AFL even existed at this point. But yeah, I mean, overall though, even with those quibbles, it does as good, if not better, a job than anyone else. So good for them.
And so who's been bad?
I don't know if it's been bad. It's just a weird way of thinking, and it's a man whose hand I have actually shaken, who I'm going to put on my bad list for the week, and that's Dr. J, Julius Erving. So Dr. J came up with his all-time best two teams in the NBA. Now, the first team are all old dudes that he looked up to, right? So you can quibble who's on first and who's on second, but the first team he had Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain. Right? So he's an old school guy, basically giving the list of his heroes when he was growing up, because all those guys were basically done by the time Dr. J started. Mm-hmm. Right? His second team is Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Karl Malone, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Again, hard to argue, except for maybe Malone, who, as soon as this was released, gave Twitter the opportunity to remind everyone that he impregnated a 13-year-old girl when he was 20 years old. That was all over Twitter. He was trending for a while. I'm like, why is he trending? I'm like, oh, that's not a good reason to be trending. But people were asking Dr. J why he left LeBron off. And just his reasoning on leading LeBron off is that he's a guy who's led the charge of super teams. So he doesn't deserve to be on the top on any all-time team. So I just want to go through his first five guys again, and then his second five guys. And you tell me which of these guys was not on a super team. Oscar Robertson, probably the least likely to be on a super team out of all these people.
Definitely.
Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, and Wilt Chamberlain were all on the same team together. They played on the same team. And Bill Russell, his team wasn't really that good, I don't think.
Yeah, I think they only won a few times, but he couldn't spread it out over a different decade. So,
yeah, I mean, but what's wrong with him? They only won. Well, no, they won the 50s and 60s, but yeah, I mean, but Bill Russell played with Cousy and like Heinsohn, like all those numbers that are retired in the rafters. Over half of them were there with Russell. Now go to the second team. Magic and Kareem played together. Mm-hmm. Also, other guys named James Worthy was also on that team. He was a pretty good player, too, another Hall of Famer. Larry Bird played with Parrish, McHale, and Dennis Johnson, all of whom are Hall of Famers. Like, what are we talking about here?
Well,
I understand maybe you don't like LeBron or whatever, but because he ushered in led the charge of super teams. Like, super teams have always existed. That's how teams win championships.
Yeah, but there's one difference.
Which is?
LeBron did that as a player. All the other ones were done through management and draft. I'm not defending his argument by any means.
I understand what you're saying.
Because I don't agree with him. And I know there's a lot of hate on for LeBron. I'm going to stay out of this one. For that one, I've ragged on him before, but I've never ragged on anything that he's ever done on the court, and I think he's an incredible player, and I think he's actually a very good human being who sometimes puts his foot in his mouth.
Right.
And I'll leave it at that. But I would think that as a former player, that Dr. J, he would sort of like take some kind of admiration that the players now have the power where they can sort of try to put some stuff together on their own. Is that not the next step from free agency? From when that came? And I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of for why he has this big an issue. Unless he just really hates LeBron. That's all I got. I really don't know what else to say on that.
Yeah, he may very well hate LeBron. I don't know. It's just really strange. Like, he issued in the super team era. No, Bill Russell and Red Auerbach ushered in the super team era. It's just because Bill Russell took advantage of general managers who had no idea what the hell they were doing, doesn't make it any less of a super team. So Dr. J, clearly one of the best players of all time, probably the coolest player of all time in terms of Dr. J just always looked put together and freaking cool. But this one, it's just weird reasoning. I just thought it was bad and just seemed petty, particularly since the other guy on there is Karl Malone, who is nowhere near as good as LeBron at all. It's not even close.
And try to chase that ring on a super team at the tail end of his career.
Yeah, he did. The 2004 Lakers.
Yes.
With Shaq and Kobe and Gary Payton.
Yeah, team implosion.
Yeah, so, it's just, had he put Tim Duncan there, I would have been okay with it, I think. I still think LeBron is better than Duncan, but I'm okay with that position right at Duncan. And I know Karl Malone's the second best scorer in league history, but, again, he had Stockton passing him the ball, who's probably the greatest assist man in NBA history. So, I don't know. Dr. J is just wrong in this. I think it's bad. I don't think it's ugly. I think it's bad. I think it's reason.
Didn't Jordan say something similar? That he would never chase it the way that LeBron did and the way that Durant did? Try and build all these other teams?
I don't know. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, when it comes to I think. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, whether he said it or not. Jordan has certainly had Pippen and a lot of good players. Rodman, Hall of Famer. Horace Grant is not a Hall of Famer. Robert Horry is someone who we've talked about as being. Horry was with. I'm sorry, he was more with the.
With the Spurs.
The Rockets and the Spurs and the Lakers. Never mind. I had that wrong. But if Jordan had never won a championship through the time he went to go play baseball, do you think he necessarily comes back all happy and goes for it again? Or do you think if he has an opportunity, goes someplace, he might? I think the answer is he might. I think it's just easy for him to say that because he'd already won something.
Yeah, and he already had the pieces.
Things are different back then, too.
Well, yeah, there's that. This one could just take some tangents that we probably don't need to go. And eventually, some week, we're going to get there anyway, because that's just what always happens.
Right.
Yeah. So what?
Anyway, that's my bad for the week.
All right. So what be ugly?
The ugly is an organization which I consider to be the single most corrupt sporting organization in this hemisphere, because UEFA is its own separate thing, and FIFA is technically based in Europe. The NCAA.
Why don't you just say them every week?
Every week, we talk about FIFA, UEFA, and the NCAA. But here's what the NCAA did this week. So, and again, a couple weeks ago, they were the good because they got rid of one of their stupid rules. But this week, at 9 o'clock, hilariously, at 9 o'clock on Tuesday night, which is, always the best time to release any important piece of news, they announced that the Board of Governors had voted unanimously to extend the contract of Mark Emmert, the NCAA president, an empty suit whose only job is to hold up any sort of negotiations for player rights to their own likeness in advertising and sports games. That's the only thing he really does. That and not give any weight to the women's basketball teams in the NCAA tournament. So they extended him by 2 years, and it's just he is he is the lackey that Roger Goodell wishes he could be. He is the shill that serves as a whipping boy with the press and comes up with nonsensical arguments as to why things are the way they are. Basically, having to defend the undefendable, because the NCAA is a multi-billion-dollar organization that somehow has convinced Joe Sixpack that the athletes who play there are properly compensated because they are, and you can't see my air quotes, but understand they're there through the phone, that are they are well compensated because they are getting an education. Which the vast majority of these high-end athletes who are sticking around for a year, they're going to classes through December and never again. Because they only need to keep the GPA up for that.
You know, it's not like they're not getting any help, I'm sure.
Right. I mean, remember the fake class at University of North Carolina for the basketball team, which somehow didn't get as much. It should have been way more punished than it was. But it was basically swept under the rug. Notre Dame self-reported when they had a tutor who was helping the basketball team, who was helping them by editing the grammar on their papers. And they self-reported and ended up I can't remember exactly what the penalty was, but having someone help with, and legitimately, that's what she was doing. She was helping with the grammar checks, making sure the grammar was right and reading through the paper for them as a tutor. They self-reported, but they had fake classes at North Carolina, and nobody cared. Do you think Bob Huggins, in his entire career at Cincinnati, had one player graduate?
So, if you use Grammarly, does Grammarly then have to sort of report the violation then to the NCAA?
No, because Grammarly is freely available to all the other students, so it's not an advantage being given. However, if the kid who has a scholarship who comes from a poor home wants some extra spending money to get a sandwich from a meal plan, he can't go get an outside job because that would be favoritism. The whole thing is stupid. If you have a full scholarship for biology and get an internship that's paid somewhere, you're fine in the NCAA. Now, I understand them not wanting. They're keeping their veneer of amateurism means that people can't be paid a significant amount of money, but all they're doing is forcing everything underground, where it's super dirty and slimy and awful. And he perpetuates it because they don't want to have to make decisions. Congress is ultimately going to have to step in and make the rules for the likenesses.
I thought that they already had a step towards that.
Sure, maybe.
I guess not. Okay, I guess I was wrong on that because I thought that they'd worked something in. Didn't California say that that athletes there could make money off their likeness?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole Ed O'Bannon case that went through.
But only on the state level.
Yeah, and they said that they've been saying that they've had to coordinate with Congress in order to get these rules done, but they've never coordinated with Congress before on anything. Any of their stupid rules, they've never gone to Congress for it before. Why do they suddenly have to go now?
Well, I think the Iron Sheik has something to say about this.
Fucking bullshit!
Yeah, so for those who didn't hear, Iron Sheik wants to say this again here. He's got so much here.
Fucking bullshit!
Thanks, Sheik.
There we go. There we go. Sorry, I wasn't. I was hoping I was going to get in what I said before you pressed the button. So
Press the button. You implied that he's not here live? Jeez, what kind of show do you think I'm running?
One with a button.
Wait, one with a button. Yeah, exactly. So I think at that point, it's almost good to talk about something that should die. People who are dead.
Mm. Oh boy.
Okay, the segues aren't
Yikes.
great. Yes.
That was a tough one. I guess. Unfortunately, we had a couple of. We had people every week who passed away. We had a couple of decently big names, and one very sad one I want to bring up to start with. Actually, transitions from the NCAA pretty well, and that is Terrence Clark. Passed away. The guy who was a freshman at Kentucky, who is probably the best prep basketball player to come out of the city of Boston since Patrick Ewing. But Clark played for Kentucky this last year and was not going back. Had signed with an agent, was going to get drafted probably in the early half of the first round. And unfortunately ran a red light in Los Angeles and was broadsided and wasn't wearing a seatbelt and died at the age of 19. Yeah.
Whole life out of him.
There's nothing good that comes out of it. It's just one of those guys who was going to make it. He was going to get drafted in the first round. I'm not a draft expert. I can't tell you exactly when that was going to be. It was probably late lottery, mid-round from what I understand. He's a 5-star prospect. He was the 8th best player in the, or somewhere between 8th and 10th best player in the 2020 class for college basketball. And just never got there. He was only 19 years old. Just and he'd been working out over the summer last year before he went to Kentucky with Jaylen Brown and the Celtics and Kemba Walker and Jason Tatum, and they saw him kind of little brother working with them, trying to work on his game and everything, and they were absolutely crushed after their game when they found out. They found out in the hallway after one of the games earlier this last week. I can't remember what's the Charlotte game or the one before. But yeah, they all knew him and were crushed, and it's just a terrible waste. Like basically on the level of Len Bias, although Bias is a likely Hall of Famer. I know it's hard to say, someone who never played the NBA, but just with his talent, he was a likely Hall of Famer. But Clark certainly had the opportunity to have a very long NBA career in front of him, and he just didn't make it.
Did Clark grow up poor that you know of?
He went to the Rivers School in Weston. Weston is one of the W towns. If you're wondering whether or not a town in Massachusetts is wealthy, if it starts with a W, there's a 90% chance that it is. So the Rivers School is a private school, but I don't know if he was there on scholarship or not. He also went to Brewster Academy in New Hampshire, which is another private school, but again, it may have been on scholarship. So I don't know the answer.
Yeah, the only reason
I don't think it's particularly well off.
Okay, yeah, the only reason I asked that is because I'm going to imagine that had he been drafted and then this happened, let's say, like a month after or something, probably the team would have taken care of the family in some capacity.
Correct.
Like I imagine that Terrence would have done for his family. And even if his family's like doing well, I mean, he'd probably still kick back something. Or not,
it's life-changing money.
Right.
It's generational changing money if it's handled correctly.
So, I mean, obviously the true tragedy is the loss of life here, but I think all the time and effort that his family probably put into, helping him foster his gift. And I don't want to make this about money, and I know that it kind of sounds like I am. But I think there's sort of like more like you said, a generational tragedy coming from that. that this was a ticket out, possibly. And again, I don't know if they were well off or not.
That I actually don't know. I do know I had heard of him coming out of Boston just because Boston is not usually a massive hotbed for 5-star basketball players. Honestly, like Patrick Ewing is by far the best player ever to come out of Boston, which is weird because he was a Knick, but and a Sonic very briefly, and an Orlando Magic, this was just by far the best player to come out of Boston in 25 years. It just sucks. There's no other way around it.
Yeah. So. No, that's a shame. I didn't know about this one.
You didn't know about what?
No, I didn't know that he passed. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that came across the wire and I was like, oh my God, what? That was crazy. So anyway, someone else who unfortunately passed away young was Geno Hayes, former professional football player with the Buccaneers and Bears and Jaguars.
He's just 33.
Passed away at the age of 33 of liver disease.
Mm-hmm.
Played, he's a 6th-round pick out of Florida State. Was ACC All-First Team back in 2007, and he had a decent career in the NFL for a 6th-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
He played 2008 through 2014. That's 7 seasons. Not too bad for the league. The average career is 4 years, so he almost doubled it. Yeah, it was only 33 when he just passed away this week.
I don't know about you, but when I first saw that headline, because I check on ESPN a few times a day. I don't know about you, but every time I see former NFL player dies, and then they're under 40, or really at any point in time, they're under 60, I should say. Isn't the first thing you think CTE?
Yeah. Yep, but unfortunately, chronic liver disease is one of those things that happens randomly. It happens randomly to NFL players too. So.
It's just like one of those. I think it was more of an indictment on just where football is. When you see something like that, you already automatically have a cause of death in your head.
Well, I feel the same way about the WWE. I figure it's either something related to CTE or steroid usage.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a lot better now than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the amount of young deaths in pro wrestling will never stop amazing me. But all right, this is getting too morbid. Let's go on to more deaths. This will cheer us up.
More deaths, yes. That's the only way to talk about this. Also from the NFL, we lost Mike Davis, safety in the NFL, starter on 2 Raiders championship teams, Super Bowl 15 and Super Bowl 18. Passed away at the age of 65 earlier this week. Probably most famous for his interception at the end of the 1980 AFC Conference game against the Cleveland Browns. He played 1 year with the Chargers at the end of his career in 87. Starter on 2 championship defenses. Passed away at the age of 65. From hockey, we lost a Maple Leaf. Do you remember Miroslav Freiser?
Freiser,
I'm sorry, that's correct. I mispronounced it.
Yeah, I remember him.
He passed away at the age of 61.
I got his hockey card kicking around somewhere. That's a former Czech player, if I remember correctly.
Correct. He'd recently been hospitalized for a blood disorder. He'd had a liver transplant in 1999 and a kidney transplant in 2018. But had a little bit of a troubled life, was married 3 times, divorced twice, busted for DUI a few times. But he played for the Nordiques, Maple Leafs, Red Wings, and was the Oilers team. The Oilers wanted him back for the 1990 season, but decided he wanted to go back to Europe during the 1990 Stanley Cup playoffs. So he didn't win the Stanley Cup that year with the Oilers. He passed away at the age of 61. Do you have anything else on Freitzer?
No. I saw him like in the '80s. I wasn't really a Leaf guy, but I mean, like, you can't escape. Apparently, my dog's got a lot to say about Mr. Preacher. I don't know what he's trying to say about that. No, buddy, you wouldn't have remembered him. I swear, you don't know who. You're thinking of a different Czech player. Okay, thanks, Jasper. You can follow him at Jasper_the friendly corgi. A little Instagram plug for my dog.
That was a big bark for a corgi.
No, he's got a lot of masculine traits, buddy. It's okay. It's okay. There'll be other Czech players. Yes, there will be. I tell you. All right, I know. There's only the one. Okay. That's called improvising.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it.
Thank you.
Moving to the world of motorsports, we lost three folks from there this week. We lost Motorsports Hall of Fame America and Motorcycle Hall of Famer Dick Mann, who passed away. He was the two-time winner of the AMA Grand National Championship.
His name was Dick Mann?
Second wing. I'm sorry?
His name was Dick Mann?
Dick Mann, yeah.
Okay.
Man with two N's, though. So.
That's much better. That was much better. Grow. Thank God for that extra N when he was growing up in school, huh?
Yeah. But he is the second winningest rider in the AMA Grand National Series history with 24 victories. From Salt Lake City, had his own bikes that he worked on, roads through like 75, from the mid-50s to the mid-70s. But yeah, a member of the... he was still competing, not on the big circuits, but when he was inducted in the Motorcycle Hall of Fame in 1998. So he is probably one of the greatest early motorcycle racers here in the United States. He passed away at the age of 86 earlier this week. We also lost one of the more interesting people in racing history, Bill Whittington, who won the 1979 24 Hours of Le Mans along with his brother Don Whittington and a German man named Klaus Ludwig. Ludwig did like 90% of the driving, but he didn't have any racing experience really at all when he somehow was involved in the 24 Hours of Le Mans and then ended up winning. But he after he left, he made a couple of Winston Cup starts back in 1980, and he finished 32nd in the 1980 Daytona 500. But afterwards, he was all sorts of interesting. He ended up pleading guilty to tax evasion and conspiracy to smuggle marijuana into the U.S. from Colombia, and sentenced to 15 years in prison. And his brother, Don, was also money laundering charges in addition to that. And they were part of the drug smuggling scandal in the 1980s, where a number of drivers from the IMSA were forced to leave because they were financing their racing teams using drug smuggling from South America. But Bill Whittington actually died in a plane crash in Winslow, Arizona earlier this week. And there's a joke about the Eagles there.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure that one is going to fly. Sorry, that's a bad joke in a plane crash. But anyway. And also we lost Charlie Glotzback, four-time winner on the NASCAR series over 15 years, raced from 1960 to 1992. He won 4 races between 68 and 71. But also was a Rookie of the Year in 64 in the ARCA series. But actually probably this last race I could think of, because Glotzback was always sort of around, but he was involved in a serious crash at a Charity Legends race at Bristol Motor Speedway when he T-boned Larry Pearson at full speed after Pearson spun. I think that, as far as I can remember, was his last race. But yeah, he passed away at the age of 82, found dead in his house in Jeffersonville, Indiana. So we did lose one person from the World of Olympics. I do want to bring up the 1960 gold medal winner in cross-country skiing from Lillehammer, Norway, in Squaw Valley. Håkon Brusveen passed away at the age of 93. And before I get into music, because that's where most of our stuff is, I'm going to say that the beige mistress was active, but it depends on whether you determine orienteering a sport.
Okay.
Do you believe orienteering is a sport?
I don't know what orienteering is.
So orienteering is like a group of sports that require navigational skills using a map and a compass to get from point to point across unfamiliar terrain while moving quickly, essentially.
Oh. Sounds like less fun geocaching.
It does sound like less fun geocaching. But it's actually kind of, I don't know if there's a show on National Geographic right now, which I guess would technically be orienteering in a way, or at least parts of it, which is a race to the center of the Earth, which is actually pretty cool if you haven't seen it, where they're traversing over large terrain, have to get to checkpoints on their GPS in order to get points and everything. But anyway, Sarolta Monspart, the greatest Hungarian orienteer ever, passed away at the age of 75 earlier this week. So her career was actually stopped short because she contracted encephalitis caused by a tick that she got while orienteering during a match. So, but she actually got the Medal for Lifetime Merit for the President of Hungary back in 2003, and was, I believe, still the only Hungarian woman ever to be the world champion in orienteering, which she was in 1972.
You know, she was so good at it, that's why she died a virgin. She could never lose her virginity.
I just think she was outstanding in her field.
Ah, nice. Nice.
Anyway, all right. So then, just running through a few folks from the world of music who passed away. We lost this week Al Schmidt, who is one of the great recording engineers and record producers of all time. Won 20 Grammy Awards, working with. You ready for this list of people?
Yeah.
Quincy Jones, Henry Mancini, George Benson, Natalie Cole, Toto, and Steely Dan.
Damn.
That is a diverse group of artists.
That is.
But yeah, he was 91 years old, one of the great record producers of all time. And he recorded and mixed over 150 gold and platinum records in his career.
That's incredible. I mean, Steely Dan, too. Like Steely Dan, Toto, Quincy Jones. When you talk about just studio geniuses, I know that Toto is kind of ragged on a little bit, but I mean, these were a great group of studio musicians before they became Toto. Steely Dan just loved the studio. They barely toured.
Yeah. By the way, he also, other ones who he won Grammys with, I didn't even give you all the Grammys. He won Grammys with Norah Jones, Ray Charles, Diana Krall, Paul McCartney, like Luis Miguel. Like, he was all over the place and has his fingerprints everywhere through music. I mean, 150 gold and platinum albums and 20 Grammys is incredible. But he passed away at the ripe old age of 91. So, Al Schmidt, good for you, my friend. We also lost Joe Long, who was the third bass player for the Four Seasons. Passed away at the age of 88. He was with them from 65 through the mid-70s. Then he went on to form a a rock and roll group called La Braccio, and a jazz band called Jersey Bounce. So after his time, so he kind of disappeared after that. But Joe Long, born Joe Louis DeBraccio, was 88 when he passed away from COVID earlier this week. Also, we lost Charlie Black, who is an American country music songwriter, wrote all sorts of stuff for George Strait and Johnny Paycheck. Anne Murray, a member of the Nashville, Tennessee Country Music Hall of Fame. But he was, he's born in 49, so he was 71 when he passed away earlier this week. Another one of those guys, wrote a whole bunch of the songs you know. Anne Murray, Gary Morris, all sorts of folks like that. He was 71. Denny Friedman, who was one of the great electric blues guitarists, played with Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Vaughan, Bob Dylan, Taj Mahal, Percy Sledge, among others, passed away at the age of 76. And then a couple people who I just wanted to go over, one a little bit more than the other. Les McKeon passed away. Do you remember who Les McKeon was?
Was he not the lead singer of the Bay City Rollers?
He was the lead singer of the Bay City Rollers. A classic case of a man who is handsome, but the rest of the members of that band, and I watched a bunch of Bay City Rollers videos this week, just to remind myself. That's one of those ones where he surrounded himself by some of the ugliest looking dudes I've ever seen in my entire life. No offense to the rest of Bay City Rollers, although I don't know how they wouldn't take offense to that. And just his handsomeness, he looks like a 10 out of 10, where he's probably more of a 7. Plus being the lead singer. That man did himself pretty well for a while. But he was 65 when he passed away. He had a tough life after starting. He was involved in a rehab show back in 2007. Admitted that he cheated on it was on rehab, actually.
Celebrity Rehab?
He said that he was just a show called Living TV called Rehab.
Oh, man.
But he said that he was a secret bisexual, admitted being unfaithful to his wife with both men and women. He'd been pulled over driving drunk and twice the legal limit a couple of times. Like, he killed an elderly neighbor as a result for reckless driving back in 1975. Like, he had all sorts of weird stuff going on with him.
Yeah, and all of that was just on a Saturday night.
Yeah, SATURDAY night. That was that band was a lot of fun. They're never going to make the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They only had 4 charting songs in the U.S. Here's a trivia question: can you name any of the other 3 other than Saturday Night?
I can't.
So one's called Money Honey, which I will admit I have never heard of in my entire life. I went and looked it up. One was called You Made Me Believe in Magic. And actually, they had 4. They also had Rock and Roll Love Letter, which is a pretty good song. And I only want to be with you, which is not the Hootie and the Blowfish song.
Okay, yeah.
Which was also actually pretty good. So, but yeah, he passed away at the age of 65.
Yeah, another one of those bands that were pegged to be the next Beatles. But you mentioned sort of like they'll never be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was conceived by, I guess, the Jan Wenner of England, maybe they would have. Like in England.
Maybe they would have. Well, there are a lot of bands. If it was conceived in England, that would be in.
Sure. No, absolutely. But their impact in Great Britain, or their success, maybe more than impact, was very, very big.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have, in UK, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 silver records and 2 gold. In the US, they just have the one gold record, which is Rollin', which had Saturday Night. So, yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that they could. And honestly, I wonder how much better the Rock Hall would be if Jan Wenner of England had decided to do this.
Just a different list of problems.
It would be a different list of problems, yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, the Bay City Rollers, an interesting band. Anyway, one other person I want to bring up. I have one more person. I just want to say Michael Collins also passed away today, who is the third guy in the Apollo 11 capsule that landed on the moon. He's the one who didn't get to leave the capsule just in case things went wrong. So Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon. But Michael Collins was also there and was in the capsule holding stuff down while they got the fun job of actually walking on a being the first people not to walk on the Earth. But he passed away today at the age of 91. So I just want to bring him up quickly. But lastly, the one I want to spend the most time on is Shock G. So Shock G is probably best known as the guy who wore the funny nose for
Digital Underground.
Yeah. And being the Humpty Dance and being Mr. Humpty Hump and all that other stuff. So the Digital Underground is probably thought of many ways as a one-hit wonder. They technically had a second one with Kiss You Back. They had a lot of R&B charts, but on the main chart, this had the Humpty Dance went to number 11, and Kiss You Back went into number 40. But he was much more than just the lead singer of Digital Underground. He was a absolute visionary and pioneer who kind of someone said that he's the connector between P-Funk and G-Funk, bringing Parliament into the modern G-Funk era that was in the early 1990s. He also was a ridiculous musician with an incredible ear. There's a story of once that he was waiting to be checked into a hotel. It was a long wait. So he stepped over the velvet rope and sat down and played the piano. And instead of anyone stopping him, the security guards held everybody back and then everyone gave him a standing ovation, the entire crowded lobby. But just an absolute visionary, and also, more importantly, the guy who just, in many ways, discovered Tupac.
Yeah,
Did you know that story?
No, I just learned that today.
Yeah, so Tupac was introduced to him and came into the studio and made up a silly song about, like, losing a microphone. I can't remember what the actual name was. Like, I lost my microphone or something. And it went from there into something much more political. And he was like, dude, you got talent. You should hang out with us. And Tupac actually started out as a backup dancer and backup hype rap guy for Digital Underground. And Shock G was really the guy who gave him his shot and got him going in the industry. And of course, then Tupac blossomed beyond anything. But it's just, we're not going to know what Shock G died of. He was only 57 when he passed. And they say the autopsy is going to take like 4 months to get the final results and everything back. But like that whole community now, they've lost Black Rob, they've lost DMX and Shock G within like 3 weeks at this point. All guys in their well, DMX is what, 50 or 51. Black Rob, I'm sorry, was 52, and now Shock G, born, by the way, Gregory Jacobs, was 57. But it's just a lot from that whole area of music in a very short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just sad.
And Flavor Flav is still with us.
Yeah. Forget Flavor Flav. Keith Richards is still with us. So, like, how? How is it possible that half the Beatles are dead, all the Ramones, and we still have Keith Richards?
So think about this for a second. How, for almost my entire life, and I'm going to be 49, I've been hearing, how is Keith Richards still alive jokes.
Mm-hmm.
He's outliving us all.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Keith Richards' body is like that episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns has every disease and they're all fighting each other off, so he's going to live forever. I kind of feel like that's Keith Richards with all his drug usage.
he's like a backwards Dorian Gray.
There's like a perfect portrait in some attic somewhere.
Yeah, that's just having this fantastic life. Just like all of a sudden, like, oh God, like, hopefully they never see the real me. Oh God, this is a Twilight Zone episode.
It's amazing. He's only 77, by the way.
Keith Richards is only 77. That can't be right.
Born December 18th, 1943.
Shit, he's younger than my dad. Holy crap.
Yeah, he's only 77 somehow. And he's been married to the same person since 1983.
Well, there you go. That's the secret. That's the fountain of youth right there.
Being married to the same person, yeah. Here, actual secret. If you want to get long-term care insurance and you're married or living with someone for a long period of time, you automatically get a discount just for being married because you're going to be taken care of by your spouse, or they're going to nag you to go to the doctor more than people who live alone. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Being married actually has or being in a long-term committed relationship actually has a benefit economically somewhere. So,
well, look at that.
Anyway,
all right, so I guess we got.
So that was a long Jeff's roll, but there were a lot of people I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess there's just my segment left. Elevator up, elevator down. I just got to get my little thing here ready for that. I didn't hit my button. Elevator up. There we go. I know you didn't watch the last UFC, so I'll just keep this brief. But I think there is something after I sort of like say who it is that I kind of want your opinion on, because I was thinking about this and it's really, really interesting. I know before I talked about how I just think one of the greatest female athletes right now is Amanda Nunes of Brazil. Now,
right.
On the same card, Rose Namajunas, and she was on not the co-main. Well, it wasn't really the co-main event, but it was the number 2, like the match from second from the top. She became the first woman to win back a title when she recaptured the strawweight title. The crowd just absolutely loves Rose. So needless to say, she's my elevator up for eventually the UFC Hall of Fame, just because she did make history. Amanda might be my favorite, and she might be, I think, the best women's fighter right now. But Rose is by far the most popular. The crowd just loves her. They love everything about her. She is earnest. There's just something special about this person. And then I thought about this too. There was the third fight from the top, or second fight from the top, was another woman's defense with the I can never say her name, so I'm not even going to try. But I was thinking here. So here's the first full card, I believe, first or second full UFC card that was that had a full house in Jacksonville. So like a complete sellout. I watched the show for a group of fans that, let's just say, are probably predominantly right wing.
Okay.
I don't know that they necessarily are, but they probably are. I find it really interesting how in mixed martial arts, that is one sport where women are pretty much almost as accepted as men's sport.
Probably true. I mean, that and the only one I can think of is probably tennis.
And figure skating, where I would argue that they're bigger on the food chain.
I'd say figure skating and gymnastics are bigger.
Oh, gymnastics, yeah. But I mean, just these have nothing. They're not even remotely alike. Those three with MMA. So I think I just want to sort of like bring that up because I'm about to sort of like go a little bit political, not too political later, but just because I know I've sort of like ragged on far right people, but it's kind of interesting that in a whole collective group of maskless people, shoulder to shoulder, they were super excited to watch women fighting and not mud wrestling, nothing like that. They were respecting the hell out of this women's sport, and that's awesome.
I'm all for that. Can I go on a slight tangent, actually, which for something else that happened in the last couple weeks that actually made me happy in the same sort of way?
Sure.
So this has nothing to do with women's sports, and I'm sorry I'm sort of hijacking.
No, I was done there with my elevator up anyway, so please.
So the head coach of Loyola Chicago, Moser, went to Oklahoma, and they hired a new coach. Do you know who their new coach is?
No, I didn't even know Moser left.
Yeah, so Moser had been thinking about leaving for a few years, but he went to Oklahoma, and they hired their lead assistant, got promoted to the head job. Not a big deal, except for the fact he's 29 years old.
Oh, wow.
His name is Drew Valentine. He's the brother of Denzel Valentine, who plays for the Bulls. Mm-hmm. And he was promoted up. The coach thought he was the right one. When Moser almost went to St. John's 2 years ago, when he was 27, the AD came to him and said, "Hey, would you put yourself in consideration for this job if Porter Moser leaves?" And that went to his 27. But the thing I love about it is he's inheriting a team where what's his name? Troutwig is off to fulfill his destiny as a 1970s used car salesman. But the rest of that team is back next year. They are going to probably be a top 25 team, and he has full support of everyone. They did a whole thing on it, and they've done a whole bunch of wonderful write-ups about what a great prospect he is. He's the youngest NCAA head coach taking over since like the 1970s. The only one recently who was about as old as he was only like 3 months older was Brad Stevens when he took over Butler.
Yeah, that seemed to work out.
Yeah, that seemed to go okay. Butler, Stevens was just past 30. Drew Valentine turns 30 next month. But this whole thing was going through how prepared he was, everything like that. And not once in any of these articles, I have no idea the racial makeup of previous coaches at Loyola Chicago with the Ramblers. Not once was his race ever brought up in anything I saw. Just the fact that he was this wonder kid, he was the best candidate, and everything like that. And the fact whether or not he's the first African-American head coach of Loyola Chicago, I don't know. And I just love the fact that for the first time I can ever remember, the ethnic background of the coach didn't necessarily matter. Like, it was just, he's the person we want for this job. He's the person who's best prepared. He's the right person for the job. I don't care how old he is. It was just great that it just wasn't mentioned. And I hope at some point we get to that point. We're not there. We have a lot of glass ceilings need to break. But this is the first one I can remember in a long time where it just never came up.
Yeah, and I think I speak for a lot of people. It's a discussion that I know we always need to have, but I am tired of it. A little bit of fatigue, but I know it needs to still continue. Which brings me to my elevator down. Now, I didn't really have an athlete that sort of had a bad week or anything specific that was Hall of Fame related, and I wasn't even going to go into it. But I talked about this last week, and Sheik's got something back here. What, how was the Oscars there, Sheik?
Fucking bullshit!
Oh, thank you. I'm going to close with the Oscars. So, if people are tired of this and they want more sports, stop. Just go. We'll do more next week. I'm going to close off with probably the worst. And people who listened last week said, "Hey, Buchner, you said you weren't going to watch it." I didn't watch it. There's no point to watching it when you can just sort of see what happens right after, get an instant thing, and then you can find anything on YouTube that's sort of relevant. Here's the other thing. Nobody else watched this either. Did you see the drop-off from last year in percentage?
No.
Okay, last year was the worst ever Oscar ratings. And it went down they had about 23 million people who watched it last year. This year went down to 9.8.
Wow.
9.
Well, there's no red carpet at all, was there?
Well, apparently there must have been, because I saw pictures of it, but there weren't people around it. So it's not like they let people around there. They moved it to some train station or something like that, displaced a bunch of homeless people so that they can do that. So, you're really going for that whole woke thing. But that's what this all was about. And my biggest problem was learning how they sort of did the order. Because they tried to set this up where, for the first time I think ever, I don't know about ever, but the first time in modern times anyway, they did the best actor last. Now, we know why they did it. They anticipated that Chadwick Boseman was going to win, and then you could have your sort of Lion King Simba moment. Ah, we're woke. Mm-hmm. Look how great we are in Hollywood. Except, what happened? Chadwick didn't win. So I look back and I try to see, why did they think it was a lock? Was he winning everything? He was winning about half. That's not a lock, is it, Evan?
No.
So it's up there where you think there's a pretty good shot. But I mean, when you're playing with those odds, this wasn't Titanic in whatever year that was, 97, I think. Where everything's going to happen. Chloe Zhao, who won for Best Director, had won apparently 40 out of 41 or something like that, leading into it.
Right.
That's a lock. You knew Nomadland was going to win. I have no intention of ever watching that movie. Why? I don't think I'm going to watch any of those films, to be honest. None of them seem very interesting to me.
Like we said, they were waiting for this year. This year's movies, I'd imagine, are going to be ridiculous comparatively. So, but continue.
But are they? Well, okay. But I'm going to finish and probably argue that they're not. But anyway, so you try to have we got done by Soderbergh, who's I believe won an Oscar. You think he'd sort of know how to produce one or direct one. You fell flat. So the audience that you knew was going to be reduced. You knew that the people who were going to be left were going to be the diehards who are going to watch it anyway, no matter what you put on. And the people who just sort of like a lot of this, who like being lectured to.
Mm-hmm.
And what were the Twitter reactions after? So they were called racist again.
Yeah.
And all because you messed up the order. Yeah, I get it.
Here's the thing. They should have known, but they were taking a calculated risk. Mm-hmm. That was probably 50-50. And the thing that people don't realize is they legitimately don't know the outcome ahead of time.
Which makes this even stupider.
Yeah.
Because you knew that there was a good possibility that this could happen. I think Anthony Hopkins, who did win, didn't really win much of anything leading up to it. That's one movie I can guarantee you I won't watch, not because of Anthony Hopkins, but because of the subject matter of dementia, and that's something my family goes through. I watched a movie about it, and it's haunting me. So I can't watch it. That's not a shot at Hopkins whatsoever. That's just my own personal thing. It hits too close to home for me. But it led to a whole bunch of people just calling the Oscars racist again. And they tried so hard, and you set yourself up to lay a big wet fart at the end. So you've got Joaquin Phoenix just sitting there, I'd like to do this on his behalf. Well, thank God he didn't talk about we shouldn't rape cows or whatever the hell he did last year. That could have gotten so much worse. And I get it. You don't want to close with Frances McDormand. She's not a hammer. She's someone who, if you've got a role for a 60-year-old white woman, yeah, she's my go-to. Is she someone I want to hang out with? No. And that's the big problem. This is never going to get better. The Oscars are dead because movies are dead. Not the idea of a movie. There's always going to be movies, but movies will never be special again. And the pandemic just accelerated what was the inevitable. And I know I'm a little older than you here, Evan, but when I was a kid, maybe it sort of overlapped here for you. If you were a movie star, you were a movie star on the big screen. You weren't a TV movie star.
Mm-hmm.
Everything now is a TV movie. Now, if you're going to be an actor, I mean, 30 years ago, if I would have had a kid and he said, I want to be an actor, it's like, oh, God, I would have done everything to talk them out of it. Now I wouldn't. There's so many options out there.
Right.
But
there are a ton of options.
Right. But, I mean, who would you say is, like, the biggest star in Hollywood right now?
It's got to be someone who's doing one of the Marvel movies. So, I don't know, say Chris Evans,
okay.
Robert Downey Jr. I don't know.
All right,
one of those guys.
Yeah, so, I mean, those two, but I was thinking Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, The Rock. Yeah, that was another. Sorry, that's a good one, too.
Okay.
I just wasn't thinking. Yeah, The Rock's a good ad.
All right, so that's I would argue he's the biggest star in Hollywood. Well, he still did television. He did that shitty baller show, but doing television isn't what it used to be. If you were a big movie star in the 80s or 90s, and you were now going to like star in a new sitcom on CBS, it's Burt Reynolds. That was a major step down for him. It's not a step down for anybody now. You're the best shits on television.
Right.
So,
yeah, but I mean, movie stars that used to be on television were like, at that point, at the end of their careers, doing cameos on Love Boat.
Right. Yeah. Or when Burt Reynolds did Evening Shade. And apparently, I never watched that show, but it lasted a few years, so I guess obviously people watched it. So the whole idea of what the Oscar, and that's what nobody's written about, whether that's Fox who just did exactly what I knew they were going to do, just say it's because we're all sick of wokeness, and then the other ones from CNN, well, they raised some good points, but then they didn't talk about how people are just fatigued. But nobody has just pretty much said that the movie star is dead. Yes, we have more celebrities. We also have TikTok celebrities and YouTube celebrities. The biggest star probably...
We talked about the Pauls last week, and neither of us were quite sure why they were famous originally.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of which, Logan Paul is going to now be fighting Floyd Mayweather, which now means the Brawl for All title is now up for grabs. The lineal Brawl for All is up. Yeah. So, and he's going to make a mint. That fight will make him millions of dollars.
Yep.
These are what stars are now. Arguably, I'd say the biggest star, bigger than The Rock, might be Kim Kardashian. And she's famous for what? Yeah, we know what, but there's the whole idea of what stars are isn't what it was. So it opens up. So the Oscars this time opened up with Regina King. I love Regina King. I think she's awesome. She's been in a lot of stuff I liked. Regina King doesn't move a meter.
No.
Last year, who did it open up with? I think it was Billy Porter? I think?
Maybe. I can't tell you.
All right, so Billy Porter doesn't move a meter either. Again, two very talented people. But they're not superstars by any stretch of the imagination. They're not. They can walk in a mall, and a lot of people wouldn't know who they are. Almost anyone who would have been in the top thing in the 90s, you knew who they were. They couldn't go anywhere. Yeah. And that is why.
Again, going back to the 90s, though, you're right. There's such a proliferation of media that there's just so many options. It's somewhat impossible to do all that. But I don't think the movie star is fully dead, though.
Okay, it's not fully dead, but it's on life support. It's just the whole idea of a superstar that is going to be someone that just is larger than life. And that's another thing that the Oscars don't have anymore. You're looking at larger than life people on their biggest day, but now they're lecturing, and a lot of them don't feel larger than life. The two people that were closed off with were Joaquin Phoenix and Frances McDormand. If I meet you up in Chicago and say, hey, look, we can go to dinner with these two, what'd you say? No, probably. I don't want to hang out with those two.
I think I'd like to hang out with Frances McDormand. I don't think I'd want to hang out with Joaquin Phoenix.
All right, well, I guess I'm more likely. All right, I might just pass and say, take your wife.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So
it's not the same, and that is really the biggest thing. And I hope that somebody really points that out, not just say it's all because of Netflix. It's all because Yeah, it's because of just the complete level of options that we have. They're like your kids are what are they now?
6 and 8.
6 and 8. Okay, so what's the start of them?
Mariah Elizabeth.
Okay, who's that?
Mariah Elizabeth is a woman in her mid-20s who people send squishies, the like stress ball thingies, to her that she fixes and repaints on YouTube.
Okay, so
it's actually all the things they watch. That is the thing they're most excited for. She comes out a new video every Friday. They've seen all the videos multiple times. And I actually think that Mariah Elizabeth is fine. She's funny. She's self-deprecating. She's very talented. I'm cool with it. There's other people they watch who are just awful. Everyone they care about is on YouTube.
Okay, so that's kind of where I was going with that. I didn't know what the answer was going to be. I just assumed it was going to be a YouTube personality.
Right.
Which is, again, just know YouTube itself, there's so much out there. Before we moved here, we went to... moved to Barbados. We went to a dinner party with some of Pauline's Filipino workers, and they actually they had it at their house, and they've got this one kid, and I'm looking at it like, what's the kid watching? And it's something called Ryan's World. Yep,
okay. Ryan's World is that kid is. That family's annoying as heck. I don't like it when they watch that. But yeah, that kid makes millions of dollars a year. Like millions of dollars a year.
Right. And so like it's one, and I think what all he does is review toys or something. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
And it was
it's the toy review. You're exactly right.
All right. So like I'm looking at that and it's like, and I'm thinking like, Jesus, it's not even filmed that well. Like why the hell didn't I come up with something like this? And I said to the family, so like, is this a big, oh yeah, this is huge for, I forget their kid's name, but I mean, it was just like just this big deal. And it's like, there's just so much stuff. But I bet you when you and I were 8, it was more traditional things that a lot of people would talk, were traditional stars because we had less options. We will never get back to where a lot of these people will matter because they're all fringes. They're all niches.
I guess that's true.
And I think that's my whole thing. I just wish that somebody would sort of look at it that way and sort of print that rather than come up with a political angle. Because when they do, I mean, they're partly right, but they're missing the whole change of culture. That has nothing to do with politics, but all about technology. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't we have killed as a kid to watch more stuff if we had that option? My dad always says to me, like, a hockey night in Canada is not special anymore. Yeah, because there's no sports fan alive that wouldn't say, well, if I can watch every Maple Leaf game, if you're a Leaf fan, that they would say, no, I just want to wait. I just wish I could only watch it on Saturdays.
I mean, do you remember watching Mel Allen and This Week in Baseball?
Yes! And it was
like the highlight show for baseball for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It happened once. There's so many things that, like, I can get out of market games for pretty much any sport here when I want. Now, it's weird that because of blackout rules, particularly, I saw this the other day in Iowa. Actually, Iowa has blackout rules on 6 Major League Baseball teams.
Well,
because of where Iowa has no teams, but they can't get home games for the Royals, Cardinals, Cubs, White Sox, Twins, or Brewers, because those are bordering states.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It's ridiculous. Like, the blackout rules are stupid in this day and age. I don't understand why they possibly do them. But those blackout rules existed for years. Like, the reason the Montreal Expos moved is because there weren't English broadcasts of them. Allowed by John Henry, back to another guy who we talk about every week, that fucking asshole. But like, yeah, it's just there's so many things that you can do now that you couldn't do before. So I guess you're right in that way, but I still think, I mean, the biggest movie star for my kids is probably The Rock or or Jack Black, who they call every time they see him Dr. Shelley Oberon, after his character from Jumanji. But like my kids don't care about movies because they can't sit still that long.
Well, I'm sure neither could we. But I mean, options are great.
I don't know. I watched Mary Poppins with my sister because I was forced to approximately 950 times.
Never seen it once.
Oh my God, I can do that. I can basically do all of Mary Poppins, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and like all those half animated Disney films. Like we watched over and over. The one with Annette Funicello, Babes in Toyland.
Mm-hmm.
Like all those ones we just watched over and over and over on VHS because my sister loved them. Although Bedknobs and Broomsticks is still probably one of my favorite movies when I was a kid.
Oh, jeez.
But like,
in case
we just watch those same movies over and over and over.
In case anyone is wondering, the Whistling Frogs are not back. It's my dog who's decided to bring every squeaky toy that he owns. He was normally very well behaved, and now for the first time after how many episodes, has decided that he needs to make his voice heard.
No, I understand.
And you too have one option is Jasper _ the Friendly Corgi on Instagram, and you can follow him. Maybe at this point we'll close because I just don't think we're going to get any further with this dog.
Fair enough. Jasper's done with us talking. So.
Yes, Jasper's decided that this show is over. He's brought in the worst toy that he could possibly bring. I love this dog painfully. I love him very much. My wife, not so much, who's decided to do nothing while I'm recording.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, not the cleanest end we've ever had, but it's an end.
All right, man. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, take care. Bye. Well, thank you to Jasper the Corgi, who decided he had to make his voice heard. You know, he's done this before on other shows that we have here on the NotInHallOfFame.com network. A network. Yeah, I'm going to call it a network. We also have How the Hell Did This Go to Number One? A show that we do where we look at number one songs and really ask the question, how the hell did this happen? We've just started the Classic Sports Review, and there's always so much more content at NotInHallOfFame.com, because if you want to know about Halls of Fame, just really so much of other things about pop culture, I think we're a pretty good hub for that. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Bye for now.